I guess in a word, music here was wonderful. You could just about say this was music heaven.
I came to Las Vegas in 1954. Got here at exactly the right time because it was boomtown USA.
I came here on a vacation in 1959. It was total insanity. I can't believe the people that I saw within the 2 weeks that I was here. And I realized the musicians that were working here were the luckiest guys in the world.
There were about, I think about 25,000 people in this area at that time. But it was still Wild West feel. And a lot of times during the show, we're playing with a big headliner on stage, and you hear gunfire. Guys are coming out shooting blanks.
In those days, the hotels were the nightclubs, and they had their showrooms and they had their lounges, full of music in all cases.
Those days, the hotels were owned by these guys. You can call them wise guys, you can call them whatever you want. They were the best bosses I ever worked for.
It was great. There was a lot of work, a lot of camaraderie. All the hotels had music 24 hours a day in those days. Went to work at 3 o'clock in the morning sometimes, 6 o'clock in the morning, noon.
Our first job we had was at the Hacienda Hotel, and we learned that our shift began at midnight. So we thought that was a mistake or misprint or something.
You started out someplace and you got big, you sold records, and the next thing you know, you played in a nightclub system. There were major nightclubs. In New York, it was always the Copacabana. Los Angeles, it was the Coconut Grove. Well, Las Vegas was the apex of the nightclub system when it finally emerged in the 50s and 60s. Why? Because we had the most money.
The shows went 7 nights a week. The band could only play 6 nights a week because of the union rules. They needed what they called a relief band, they called them, to play the 7th night. And when I got to town, they were putting together a new relief band. They needed one. So I got right in on the ground floor of that band. Not only did it pay better, because it was a much harder job, because you had to play a different show each night, but you never got bored.
I was like a lot of other aspiring musicians. I just thought I would come here and put in my card and go to work here. And the union, the transfer laws, you have to be here 3 months before you could work steady.
The union tried to stop me because they said I had to sweat out 3 months before you can start working and get your union card. And but I didn't do that. I mean, the guy said, no, we need them, these piano players, a lot of piano players in town, work in the lounges and stuff,
I accepted a job with Florian Zabak. You probably never heard of him. He had a very famous record called The Hot Canary. Every string player in Las Vegas came to see this guy that I was working for, but they also heard me. And before you know it, they had me rehearsing with different chamber music groups.
I worked the Sands Hotel in the lounge. And we backed up acts that came in, stuff like Billy Eckstine, and even Ella worked the lounge, and just everybody, That was when the Rat Pack was in the showroom. Sinatra would be in the showroom. It was classy. Everybody was always dressed up in gowns, tuxedos.
We were at the Flamingo Hotel, so we worked opposite Harry James and his big band with Buddy Rich on drums, Billy Eckstine with 9 pieces, Della Reese, 7 pieces. Our group, we had 5. It was a who's who of music and entertainment.
A Broadway show opened up in the Riviera Lounge, La Plume de Matante. So they came into the lounge and they said to me, would you like to audition? Even though they knew I didn't have a card. And I said, sure. So I went in there thinking that I would be there a short time, and that was it. I never left.
I played with the Rat Pack. Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis, Dean Martin, and there's Nat Cole, Billy Eckstine, Jack Benny, who was a very funny man, Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan. They would all come in, and usually the shows went, at that time, 4 weeks. So you really got a chance to nail down their music and get to, sometimes you get to know them, hang out with them backstage.
Best guy I ever worked for in my life was with Dean Martin. He was a beautiful man. He just he didn't want to rehearse. He wanted to be left alone. You know, he just wanted to do his show. He was just a great guy.
Frank Sinatra always had his own pianists, and he comes into the Riviera. Well, Bill Miller comes in. He's Frank's conductor, piano player, and he's got his arm in a sling. And he said to me, he said, "Hey, don't go." He said, "You got to play." I was a little nervous. I said, "Well, give me some words of advice." He said, "Think 1940s." You could feel the electricity in the room when he was performing.
Louis Armstrong, a great storyteller and a very funny guy. So we'd all rush back early and sit around the pool at the Sands Hotel. And Louis would come up sitting on a lounge chair, holding court, telling stories about being on the road. Pretty soon the stage manager comes running out. "Hey, second show, it's 5 after 12. We're supposed to start the show at 12. You know, we're out there telling stories. And Louis said, "Okay, man, we'll be right in."
When Liberace first came in, I just assumed, well, I don't have to play. You know, Lee's a great pianist. Wrong. They had the band set up, and here's the piano with Liberace, and the band set up here, you know, upstage, and my piano was right to his left. He had those days his original conductor, Gordon Robinson, and he said, "You're going to be his left hand." He said there are times when his left hand is going up and down like this. He's not even touching the keys. He said, "So that's what you're going to be doing." You know, a lot of people look at him and they say, well, he was corny, and let me tell you something, he was a fabulous entertainer. He naturally had to bring in an opening act. So he brings in this opening act, we didn't know who she was. This is Barbra Streisand. And when she starts singing, when she ever opened up, wow, what a voice. I mean, everything stopped. You could hear pin drop in that whole place.
This was a small little town. But when you drive in and you see the International, which then became the Las Vegas Hilton, and Elvis's name, and Barbra Streisand, and Vic Damone, and some pretty heavy people, thinking, "Oh my God, how am I going to make it in this town?" You know.
I remember the first time I ever was on stage in Las Vegas. I was working the lounge at the Thunderbird, and I was getting discouraged because all of the greatest entertainment in town was across the street, and I wasn't there. I was in the lounge of the Thunderbird. And I got a call to go over and play second keyboard for Steve Lawrence and Eddie Gourmet, which I eventually ended up being the music director. And I remember that first night at Caesars, when the curtain went up, and I'm thinking to myself, wow, man, I've made it.
Guys were playing from one casino to the next. They play one show here, and then 2 hours later, they have to run across the street to be at the next show.
If time worked out where I could run and do a 2-hour casual, and it says, "Can you be here by 9 o'clock to do another job?" Sometimes it would just fall into place. And it's almost exciting to think and fun to be able to put something like that together.
Oh, things were popping then. I mean, the hotels were full of the old acts that came in with their own arrangements. So therefore they needed local musicians. So it was a real good time for the musicians here to make a living, you know, to support their families.
You went to work 2 shows a night, 8 and 11 or 8 and 12, whatever show times were. Steady job, insurance, everything was great. It was a great place to to raise a family. I mean, the showrooms back then with the Musicians Union protection was great.
I bought my first house in 1974 before I even started at the Flamingo. Bought the house because I knew I was going to have the job. And you made your mortgage payment in a week.
We created stable lives because we had year-round work, and the main thing was we also negotiated and got health insurance, which was huge. So they had the benefits of steady employment, plenty of employment, coupled with benefits.
My dear friend from Philly was the lead trumpet player at Caesars, Stu Sadaloff. And he was instrumental in getting me over there when there was an opening at Caesars. And my first act was Sinatra. And sure enough, in his program, he had a couple tunes that featured the trombone. And that's where I got my debut.
Sinatra had always talked about that, how it was his musicians that made it great. He knew that. That's why he surrounded himself with the greatest musicians. So when he'd come to Las Vegas, he would actually be excited and happy because he could perform at his top level, not having to drag the band behind him. They would lift him up and make him even better.
He said, if we aren't great, we better be damn good, he said. Those were his words. And that's the way that's what he instilled in me. And in everybody that worked with him, everybody. His favorite expression was, where are you working next week?
Well, if you really think about those guys, the band or the orchestra was a part of the show. It wasn't an addendum. It was a part of the show. It was Sammy Davis and the Count Basie Orchestra. It was a big orchestra with strings. Everyone was in tuxedo. It spoke to an era.
Back in the early days, there were individual owners who I really enjoyed working for them, because if you had a problem, like say having the piano tuned, I could go to the boss and say, can we tune that piano? Tomorrow it'd be tuned. And then later when the corporate people came in, as nice as some of them were, they had to have meetings, and this department had to check with this department and all this, and maybe you got the piano tuned next week.
When the so-called syndicates ran the town, you'd be surprised how much simply was settled by a handshake. That's all you needed with those people. Their word was their bond.
When the gangsters were here, we had heaven. But when they left, well, they had the black and white stuff. Well, I had to tell you that.
The thought was that black musicians couldn't read, and nobody called them. So that was difficult, and having an all-black band at that time was out of the question.
Like even the lounges at the Flamingo, Bugs's place, we had to come through the back, and we had friends to come see us. So the Major D had to come back there and get us and bring us out there and stand there while we talked to people, and then usher us back to the back.
Sammy Davis could not eat in the restaurant at the Sands, where he starred and bring all the people in. He could not stay at the hotel and stay on the West Side. Frank Sinatra broke that up. He finally got Frank says, if Sammy can't stay here and go out there and mix with the people and drink, well, I'm not going on. And that started the desegregation.
The mistake Nevada made was they got rid of the mob, because when the good guys were here, the money was always right. If anything was different, it would be that maybe you got a little more.
When I first came here, the music on the Strip was all the great entertainers, the great American songbook, if you will. Dean Martin, Frank Sinatra, Sammy Davis. Jack Jones, Red Fox was at the Sahara. I could go on forever.
You walk into the Sands, and there's the lounge. There's like Mr. B singing, Billy Eckstine singing in the lounge with a 6-piece orchestra. And then you go in the showroom, it's like maybe Stephen Eady's there with Sinatra. Then at the end of the show, you would come out and everybody's dressed up, nice tuxedos, beautiful bow tie. Ladies are in gowns.
In 1979, the excitement was still part of that old days of Las Vegas. It was kind of getting to the end part of it, but at least I caught a lot of it, all the marquees with all the great stars. You've probably heard the stories, you've seen it on TV, but it's also true. It was very, very exciting.
There was a moment in time in the 60s through the 80s where the stars that came here would actually shine brighter than they would if they were somewhere else. And they felt it and they appreciated it, and I think they respected the people that were here, the musicians that were here.
Playing in a production show is a challenge, and there certain people can't do it. You have to have a certain kind of a mental attitude to deal with the repeated playing of the same music. You knew that when you went to work, you had to play the show, you had to play it flawlessly, and then after work, maybe you'd go play at the union.
There was a room in the back of the musician union where the big bands would rehearse and play. They wanted to do something different, and so they all went down to the union at night, and there was always 2 bands playing.
They'd all head on down to Union Hall and have a couple drinks at the bar, and there'd be bands playing until like 6 in the morning. Usually the new guys in town trying to break in, be heard.
Now I'm, a 15-year-old kid, my trumpet, and sitting there and listening to this unbelievable music. I mean, these guys were so good, and they had already played 2 shows.
Bands at 12 o'clock in the afternoon, 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, they have one at 10 o'clock at night and 2 o'clock in the morning. So you'd meet the people who aren't working, and then at 2 o'clock in the morning, all the established players would be there.
I can remember one night, I swear to God, John Harner, the trumpet player, he was with Stan Kenton, and he's an incredible trumpet player. And I had gone to school, and I was wasted tired, and I fell asleep. And they started this tune, and he played this high G, which is a really, big fat note on a trumpet. It was so loud and so, it literally woke me up. His single note, the first note of the tune. And it was just so exciting to get that kind of experience.
They were called Kicks bands, and there was 3 a day, and they always needed a bass player, and so they let me play, and I really had no business being there.
So months went by, and I would go every weekend. Somebody wouldn't show up, or enough guys weren't in the section. There were 5 trumpets. So somebody would call me up, and I'd sit on the 5th trumpet book and not know what to do, and paralyzed with fear, But every week that it would happen, I'd get a little better.
While musicians were working, they liked an arrangement, they would go photocopy the parts and have their charts, and then they would play them for fun, jazz stuff, and they would get together, come in the bar. Sarah Vaughan was often a frequent, when she worked here, she'd come in, you'd see her sitting in the Union Hall.
I feel sorry for the older musicians here because they know what it was like, And I think when they sold the Union House, I think that really broke everybody's heart because that was where everybody went to play. And there's never been anything to replace it since then.
I would say 1,800 or 2,000 musicians were working at one time because every hotel had an orchestra of 18, 16, 18 musicians. Some of them used to have 40 musicians. I mean, everybody was working.
After I left the Riviera, I went into the Desert Inn and the Monte Carlo restaurant. The Monte Carlo restaurant was a gourmet restaurant in the Desert Inn. And it was, the DI was at the time owned by Mo Dalitz. We worked at the time 6 nights a week, which is a union contract. So we're due to have 1 night a week off. So one night I'm at home, it's a Monday night, and I get a phone call from the maitre d', George LaForge. George calls up and said, Mr. Dalitz wants to know why you're not here. I said, tell him it's our night off. He said, he wants you here right now. What do you think? Within a half hour, I had a tux on and I was at the DI. And he's got every known big gambler you ever heard of. Minnesota Fats, Joe Bernstein, all of these, Jimmy the Greek, all of these great gamblers are all at this big table. I don't know what they were celebrating. We were there till almost 2 o'clock in the morning playing. No break. So now when the party broke up, Mo Dalitz turns around, here's a guy, he was the head of the mob guy, out of Cleveland. And he turns around and looks at us and he says, why weren't you here tonight? Why weren't with Mr. Dalitz? It's our night off. He said, well, my stars in the main showroom, they work 7 nights a week. I said, yeah, but they're getting $50,000 a week too. They're getting paid for them. So then he just stared at us like this, and he started walking away, and he looks back and he says, send me the bill. And he walked out. So we sent him a doozy of a bill for the 7th night. They never batted an eye, except we never had another night off for 2 years.
The sky was the limit on expenses. I remember Tony Bennett. He had a 100-piece orchestra. I'm thinking, what? How much money is that?
I was working with Joe Gershel at the Hilton. And when Elvis came in, I would play with the string section. The place was packed every night. Packed. So at the balcony, you couldn't fit another person up there. And when I looked up there, that balcony was doing this, was swaying. But he was a nice guy. Elvis was great. I mean, it was Elvis. Elvis was Elvis, you know. I mean, he's a real Elvis. You know, you see these guys today, I mean, my God, you are the last.
We used to get little gifts in those days from various entertainers, like Milton Berle would always give a bottle of scotch. Tom Jones would give you, there would be a bottle for everybody every week. And at that time, Don Rickles would also tip the band $25 a week. But I got a check for $700 from Steve. He gives me this and check, and I'm like, you know, that was actually more than the scale we were making at that time. And that was very special.
So I'm 8 years old, actually 6 years old, and my dad starts working with Frank Sinatra. I don't know who he is, but I go, you know, he takes me to rehearsals, so I'm sitting, you know, 8 feet away from Frank Sinatra and 40-piece orchestra, and I'm hearing this sound, this, you know, unbelievable acoustic sound. Even though I can't remember anything I studied in college or high school, I can remember the way he phrased a tune, or how the lead trumpet player sounded, and how he swung this particular phrase. I actually have that. I remember that in my head. It was that dramatic.
I used to sneak in to the casinos, and I would see bands like Wayne Cochran and the CC Riders. I'd see B.B. King with a full orchestra in a lounge. I would go late night to the Union and see the Kicks bands after, and I mean, I get goosebumps thinking about it. The musicians, the level of musicianship in the music was amazing. And some of those musicians heard about us. They kind of heard through the grapevine that there were these young Spanish kids who were, you know, who were playing and singing. And they'd come and see us, and these were all the guys from Elvis's band and, you know, from all the big orchestras, and they kind of took us under their wing. They would, many times, they'd take me and, you know, it would be like Diana Ross, and they'd sit me in the back behind the string section, or, you know, behind the horn section. I would just get baptized in these amazing orchestras and bands.
Monk Montgomery, the brother of one of the brothers of Wes Montgomery, the famous guitar player, had started the Jazz Society here probably in the early 70s, maybe even late 60s, I don't know really when. And they put on picnics and concerts and whatever, so we would do that. We did some broadcasting from the National Public Radio studio here. We did some gigs at UNLV.
There was never really a lot of jazz in the showrooms or even in the lounges. It was basically in like little clubs off the strip. Like there was a place called the Tender Trap on Flamingo, which had jazz for years.
The Speakeasy, and there was a jazz club. Only jazz, no commercial music. So I get the chance to play with, the best guys. You never knew who was going to walk in the door. The one I remember was Jaco Pastorius, the bass player. He came in one night, and I just was playing, and I look around, and there he was with his bass hanging on his shoulder like a soldier. And there was a bass player playing a solo at that moment. So he didn't care. In the middle of his solo, other bass player, he connected his bass and the amp and started playing another solo in front of the other guy, so he had to stop.
As long as you knew what you were doing, now, it doesn't matter whether you're black or white, as much as can you hold down the chair, is what they used to say.
There was a couple of little clubs that featured jazz where you could go after work. There was a place called the Black Magic, which was on the corner of Tropicana and Paradise Road. And after hours, you would go there and you'd see Sarah Vaughan, Ella Fitzgerald, all the great jazz players, and they would play till 6, 7 in the morning, and it was so dark in there, and you would go outside and the sun would hit you and you'd be blinded.
There was a place at the time, which is almost legendary really among certain crowds, called Ferdinand's. It's not there anymore. And we played there from like 2 or 3 in the morning till 6 in the morning, 3 nights a week for about several years. And that's kind of where we honed our craft, so to speak.
The entrance to the airport that says Las Vegas Airport or McCarran Airport, there used to be a jazz club there. called the Black Magic, where all the musicians at night at the end of their gigs, they would go in there and jam all night. Singers come in. Oh, the place was packed constantly.
The lounges were not dance music. No, they were where guys would go in and entertain. Guys like Sonny King, all the different entertainers, they would go in and entertain. For an hour, 3 times a night.
We worked at the Royal Inn, 50-cent drinks, for Michael Gahn and Frank Toti for 6 years, actually, 12 midnight to 6 in the morning. It was a lot of fun, and everybody came, no matter who the musicians were or what band they were playing with, or if they were with a big star, or if, like Johnny Carson's band, for example. Ed Shaughnessy used to come in and sit with our band, and our band was a rock and roll band, basically. And it was really, it was a blast.
If you played in the lounge, your name was on the marquee outside. There was a glamour involved with that. And the musicians from the showrooms and the musicians from the lounges, it was a real community, and the people, when they were done with their gig, they go out and support the other people, and everybody knew everybody.
Stars who were well known, like Vic Damone or Jerry Vale, they played the lounges. They did shows at 10 p.m. and 2 a.m. in the morning, which were directly in between the main showrooms, which went on at 8 o'clock and then midnight.
I would also seek out solo pianists so that I could sit in with them. And my first brave attempt was at Caesar's Palace, and the pianist was Giovanni. And he was very gracious, and I would go and sing for hours at a time for no pay. It was too exciting because as I sat up there on that piano bar, I would watch all of those great legends walk through there to go and eat.
Every day was basically a party, because you could go to all the big shows, they knew who you were, It was truly Vegas, where it was based on entertainment, where artists would come in town for like 2 and 3 weeks at a time. Now it's like, you're lucky if you can get an artist to come in for 2 days.
It was a whole different kind of a town. My phone rang. Like I said, even though we didn't do the main show rooms, we did a ton of lounges. And there was a lounge in all the casinos. I turned down more stuff than I get now.
Music was just jumping then, then all of a sudden, the accountants came in, put a kibosh on everything. Everything was dimes and nickels, and it kind of, because of that, jobs were eliminated, the size of orchestras changed, or even the policy of having a live orchestra changed.
The strike was about maintaining a certain complement number of musicians in the showrooms.
Well, I think a lot of it had to do with so many of these groups that were using recorded things and instruments that took the place of musicians, all these synthesizers and things like that. And the union tried to put the kibosh on that.
The union says, well, you can't use tape. The hotel says, well, we're going to use tape. So the union said, well, we're going on strike, which we did. All the shows were shut down. Of course, all my friends, a lot of my friends said, well, they can't play shows without us. They can't play without live music. I said, you're kidding yourself. We were becoming dinosaurs.
As the music industry changed, from the standpoint of content, there was less and less need for big bands. Siegfried and Roy, after using a 19-piece band for years, they went to tape because a magic act, the music stays the same.
Corporations just started coming to town, and that kind of started the new era, good or bad, of Las Vegas. And that was the beginning of tape music in Las Vegas, and so many musicians lost their jobs.
I'm actually taking a solo on stage with Frank Sinatra, and I'm right next to him, and he's looking at me, he puts his hands around my shoulder, and I play a solo, he introduces me, It was great. I mean, looking at people standing up, clapping, all that. And I closed on Sunday. Monday morning, I was in the unemployment line.
You know, I know that it affected the musicians tremendously, and there was a lot of musicians at the time that they gave up and they quit the business.
About a half a dozen hotels had band together to basically get rid of live musicians, and they succeeded at that, totally succeeded at that. And through that, the musicians union, we had to sell our building in order to survive. And so that watering hole where the musicians could congregate and network and just hang out, disappeared.
Things started right there, yes, to tighten up a little bit, you know. You could see that some of the groups that were working the hotels started working some of the local spots.
I went back on the road and I started working with non-union musicians because, you know, you need to work. And in those days, if you work with non-union musicians, you have to pay a penalty or something. So I had to leave the union.
One talks about a rebirth. As long as everything is based on money and you get accountants that came from the Howard Hughes era, when Howard Hughes' accountant got into doing his business, it just put a damper on everything. I hate to say this, but when the mob ran things flourished.
What I tried not to do was to do work that put those people out of business, because there was a lot of hotels that came to me and wanted to get stuff done to put in music, to replace musicians. I did refuse to do it.
The musician strike failed. And in it failing, that orchestra in every hotel died and went to heaven.
I know New York is loaded with their wonderful players, and in California is where, you know, LA is loaded with their wonderful players, but we have some world-class people that have truly made their mark on jazz music here in Vegas.
The music business part of the deal is hard in any city, you know, to get the gigs, get enough money to keep good players in the band, and so there's a whole part-time job that goes with that, and there's a lot of hours. For every hour that you spend on stage, you probably spend 10 hours getting there.
It can be difficult, but if your band is pretty quality players, which I think we have, and we have a great singer, people recognize that, and the work just seems to come along.
I played everything from the high-end corporate party all the way down to the little local bar, up and down the strip, at the casino lounges. I think it was pretty typical, you know, singing on a stage behind a bar and playing, and people playing casino games and not even looking up. Sometimes they'd clap, sometimes they wouldn't.
I've worked primarily all the lounges in town, and maybe say I've been in 80% of the hotels here, many of which are now imploded. And for instance, the Dunes, I played the lounge at the Dunes, and now I'm performing on the same exact ground, but it's in the Bellagio Hotel.
There's venues to play for smaller venues where there's a good loyal audience, but no one's making a living doing it. And that's the key here. It's very difficult to make a living as a full-time musician anymore.
Most musicians these days have a day gig as well, you know, as the night gig. And I'm an audio-visual designer and programmer.
When I first came to Vegas, it was basically playing in lounges, playing top 40 music. what I found out was you kind of had to be versed in all different styles to really make a living as a musician in Vegas.
As David Copperfield says, you have to go everywhere and anywhere you can to perform. I don't care if it's free or if it costs $10, you have to be there to perform if you want to be a great musician.
When I came to Vegas, there was a lot of autonomy. You know, people like Steve Wynn and you know, would say, I want him. Let's put some, you know, money into it. Let's give him some billboards. Harris did that with me. Now, you first of all buy your way into a room. It's kind of like doing a Broadway show. You know, you invest all the money, you go up there, and you pray that the reviews are good, the word of mouth is good, and it happens fast enough that you can turn it over. If that had been my life at Harris, I wouldn't have lasted.
What I make now, I made 40 years ago. You know, so it's not like, and then you get talk to some of these people and that want to hire you, and they ask you how much you want, and they look, and when you tell them a price, and they look at you like, wow, I can get a DJ.
We have a band. We have a 4-piece band, and we don't believe in tracks and all that stuff. You know, if you can't do it live, then don't do it at all.
I actually moved here 2 years ago, and I heard two different things. One was the people who were bitter that the crash hurt, and there was a lot of people that were not working as much, either had left town or weren't able to play because there wasn't as many venues. And the others were like me, I'm more the optimist. I didn't worry I wouldn't be able to find an opportunity to play, I just knew I might have to work harder than normal.
There are some really good, real jazz players here, and that's what I come from. So it took a while to find these guys, you know, but of course there's no work. So it's kind of like, it's very disheartening in that sense.
In the first year it was a little bit quiet. I started with the jams and just came out and played for free and sat in and said, I can play, and you know, you can tell them what you've done in the past and all the people you've played with that would be impressive, but till they hear you.
You have to put bread on the table, you have to pay your bills. I mean, you're a musician, so you have to work, and there's all different kinds of work. You know, there's everything from the corner bar, playing with tracks. You know, there's some groups that play half live and half with tracks.
I mean, music is an industry in itself, but I think corporate, the business aspect of it in Vegas is killing live entertainment and making it very difficult to have this as a way of living.
I really hate to see musicians working for the door. I'm sorry, these, you know, they pay their dues to get to where they are.
A lot of the guys are paying to play, you know, which is really sad. You know, seeing that Vegas was supposed to be built on entertainment.
Well, you know, you have to have an attitude that you're going to find something fun in it, no matter what. Plus, you're getting paid, and so as a professional, you have to, whoever's paying you, you have to give them your 100%. And you have to take the attitude that, well, maybe this type of music isn't exactly what I want to do, but it's all part of the progression of events, and something good usually comes out of it.
It's terribly different. There was a time when I was playing nothing but jazz, no pop, and I was playing 3 different restaurants, and I only had to work 3 days a week. Now, I would work 9 days a week, 15 days a week, if there was such a thing possible.
It's not popular music. Even then it wasn't popular, but it had been. And so the people that were doing it had grown up doing that, playing in Lunsford's band or in Duke Ellington's band, or, you know, these are the people that made up these orchestras. So they had this ungodly experience that they brought to what they were doing. There's a skill set for a 4th trumpet player or a 2nd trombone player that's gone. Those guys that doesn't exist anymore.
Everybody has those gigs that they do, that, you know, that they earn a paycheck, and everybody's totally blessed and totally grateful for the opportunity to play music for a living, in whatever capacity that is. But, you know, at the same time, everybody does gigs that, you know, okay, maybe they're playing the same show every night, right? So this gig on this stage with this band is a way for us to basically get to really play music from the heart and from the soul.
Back in the 80s, I think Frank Gagliardi, who was a jazz band guy, got together. He had played on the Strip. He used to be a percussionist in the orchestras. So, and he knew a lot of guys that worked in town. He got this program started with UNLV to actually funnel guys right on in.
Now, it's also kind of turned around where there's a lot of work now for our student musicians in theatrical productions and shows like Jersey Boys. Almost the entire horn section for Jersey Boys are UNLV graduates.
When I was in my first year at UNLV, actually, I started playing in the Caesar's Palace house band at the time. Actually, the first gig that I did at Caesar's Palace, and I was just a sub at that time, subbing for the second trombone player, was Chicago, the band, and I was terrified. That was amazing.
So it's kind of come full circle where now there are many opportunities for our young student musicians to perform in Las Vegas. In fact, our current UNLV Jazz Ensemble is now kind of the resident orchestra for the Jazz Roots series that's going on at the Smith Center in the big hall in the Reynolds Room.
There are artists who come into this room who would have nowhere else to work in town because they're niche artists. People like Kurt Elling, who to me is the greatest jazz singer out there. He's not going to go into a casino, but he can come in here. Barbara Cook, who is a quintessential cabaret artist, can come in here, and her people, the people who live in Las Vegas, who want to see great cabaret performance or great jazz, now they have a room to see it in.
Recently, we had the Lincoln Center Jazz Orchestra come out, and they did a concert at the Smith Center. And afterwards, guess who shows up at the dispensary for a jam session? Wynton Marsalis, you know, and Vincent Gardner, tremendous trombone player. Just, you know, we have good jazz here.
In every era, including during the Bible days, music has always been a part of society. So it's a very important part of the world, of society. It's important.
The scene had changed quite a bit. Like I said, a lot of the people I knew weren't here. They were still doing jams though. There was a jam out at the Hurricane that I would go play music at, and there's some today out at Joey's Tavern. We go out there and jam.
All of these high-end performers, they come down to the Bootlegger after their shows because everybody has to have something to do after they perform in a Cirque du Soleil show or any other large performance set, and they come down to the Bootlegger and they all have dinner, they sign up on the list on Monday nights and perform, and that's where it all starts. For me, it had a large impact, is going to the Bootlegger and meeting all these people.
There's a Saturday night one in a tavern up in the Northwest. Mike actually plays keyboards on that one, where all the horn players from town come in. And you know, you've got 8, 9 horn players, and they all know the book. So when you call a tune, and you have this entire horn section behind you playing, it's pretty awesome.
There are, I should say, still big bands that do rehearsal big bands around town, and they're great.
It's like a steady job. No money, but I need it. It's great therapy. I need to play. I don't know. I'm afraid to think what might happen if I don't play. I don't want to sit home and watch The Price is Right, but if I can play.
In the beginning, that nobody was playing except, like I said, at these small dive bars occasionally. Most of the cats were on the big bands, on the orchestras, and so there wasn't really a jazz scene of any kind. Now, it seems like in the last 10 years or so, just seems to be more happening. You seem to be able to create a jazz gig a little more easily now.
We play right here. The Speakeasy Swingers play at the Italian American Club every month. There's a club called the E String that has a lot of wonderful jazz. And then Lon Bronson's big band used to play midnight to 4 in the morning or something at the Riv. And they still play. They're at either the Railhead or Sunset or something like that.
A couple of years ago, we were doing a thing in the main showroom with the Tropicana. It was kind of a transition. And I put together this thing where we'd have a different big band every Monday night after we got done playing out in the lounge. It was amazing. It was old school Vegas.
We do programs that have several different kinds of music, and I kind of slide straight ahead jazz in, and people like it. They just are a little afraid of the word jazz now, which is unfortunate.
Las Vegas Jazz Connection is a band that Carolyn Freeman and I started. Keep in mind, this is a big band with strings and everything. It's huge. The last CD that we made, I think there were about 34 musicians on most of the tracks. And we do concerts two or three times a year.
You know, when the economy kind of went south around 2008, everything just dropped out, and our blues scene scaled way back, and clubs were no longer hiring players, bands. They went back to the old jukebox, you know, thing. So, and we're pulling out of that now, and more clubs are hiring live musicians, which is great.
From a production standpoint, from a technological standpoint, this town is unequaled anywhere. These shows, the Cirque du Soleil shows and the Celine's show and the Jersey Boys and all, the production is fantastic. And in some cases, the music still survives.
I'll tell you, when I came here to Vegas as a full-time performer, a resident performer, somehow I knew I had to have a great band, because probably going back to those early memories of what Las Vegas was about and what performing was about on the main stage in Las Vegas showroom, that had to be a part of it. It couldn't be me with a quartet. It had to be more than that. So I got this great band, and it was one of the smartest things I ever did, because what happened was that people not only talked about what I did, but talked about the band.
We're lucky with Celine. She's got a 31-piece orchestra. It's incredible. I mean, that is really the first, in my opinion, real throwback to what this town was like.
The more live music you have, the more validity the show has. Live music means validity. Anything else is de facto karaoke.
You can go down to Fremont Street any Friday night and see literally hundreds, if not thousands, of people locked in to where the live bands are playing, because it's the universal language.
You know, I'm out every night sitting in with artists, and there's tons of live music, and I've been having a great time.
Always been a history of great music here in Vegas. And the guys that came before us, you know, the lounges back in those days were like the showrooms, right? That's where all the stuff happened. What we're trying to do, you know, especially with Santa Fe and the Fat City Horns, we're trying to play music that we love. I think that's how we're able to kind of keep the legacy of great music and great entertainment going in Las Vegas.
We're still in a state of change, and the one thing about the city, or the Clark County, is it seems to know how to keep reinventing itself.
I think the future's bright for live music in Las Vegas. I think we see these curves happen here, and we saw curves where it was all tracked music in the shows, and we see live music back now. And I think that the more of these shows that come into town and the more musicians come, it makes our stew richer here.
I keep telling everybody, you know, it's really comfortable to sit and listen to the music that you're familiar with, but we have to open our ears and give the youngsters a chance to listen to what they have to offer and support the future.
Dave Loeb is the director of the jazz department, and he surrounds himself by some great musicians. It's a great program, and some wonderful musicians, writers, arrangers, players are coming out of the school.
I think they have a distinct advantage over many of the other cities around the country because there's an open feeling here. There's more of a welcoming atmosphere for the young upcoming artists.
I got to know a lot of the guys that I'm working with right now at the university. When I went back to get my degree, I played in the jazz ensemble. I don't know how many of those guys that came out of the program are here working in town, and quite a few.
The high schools here are turning out great musicians. Some of them are amazing when you hear these kids play.
I work in the school system. I started an organization called Artists for Kids, which basically is a mentoring program where we invite people. I go into the schools and I talk to talented kids, and I find out what their interests are. And one of the times, a young man said, "Well, I want to be a conductor. That's what I want. I want to conduct a Broadway show. I want to conduct an orchestra." Hooked it up, and the young man had got to come in and be in the pit and got to go through, experience a rehearsal. My point being that in Las Vegas, we have a great resource, which is excellent singers and excellent musicians who are more than willing to step out and help young people. If we don't reach out and take the opportunity to help young kids understand what excellence is about, because if you want to have a career, if you want to be a musician for life, you need to be excellent.
Technology has changed things, so it's created more opportunities for us to record our stuff and get it out, but it's also reduced the number of live venues. But for a musician to create, to sit with an instrument, one on his own, to create music, is always going to be there, because that's where it all starts.
I've played jobs where people have come up to me after a set, and I'm playing with a band that has trumpets and trombones and saxophones. And a woman said one time, she says, "You know, I've never seen a group where everybody who's up there is actually making the sound that I hear."
The whole environment has changed, and the kids today haven't been brought up on that, so it's all foreign. It's a foreign language. It means nothing to them.
How can you be without jazz or music of any kind? I can't see the world without it.
Well, see, people want to feel good again. You know, you can sit and play and play a song, and people go, okay, and they get up and they dance with it. But it was one thing for people to come up and say, "You know what, you touched my heart. You touched my heart." Then, like my mother used to say, the light bulb goes off, and then you know that you've done something special.
You know, today it's the kind of thing, if you can't dance to it or sing along to it in your chair, you know, they don't have patience for it. But it's America's folk music. I mean, they need to know what this is. So I think that's what they need. They need an audience. Jazz needs an audience.
This city should have a jazz festival. Are we not set up perfectly for a jazz festival? Maybe I should try to sell that. That's not a bad idea.
I think Vegas needs to, in a way, kind of, you know, go back in time and bring that part of, you know, its life back. It's not outdating it. Jazz is an American art form. I mean, it's something that we should keep alive anyway. We should revive it. If anyone revives it, we should revive it.
The lounge, I think, would come back with younger entertainers that aren't the superstar entertainers coming to Vegas, just like it used to be. Frank Sinatra didn't work in a lounge, but Don Rickles did.
There are some people that are starting to see that, well, maybe there is something to this whole live band thing that was really popular.
The big line is always, where do you go to see some music? Where do you go? And you make those connections, but once people, once you get them out, you got it.
More, I hate to say it, but the techno and the disco and this club scene and all that, not to say that it's all bad, but the more of that synthetic that's out there, the more obvious the real thing becomes.
There's something about it, you know, that has been continue on and up. I think it's continued on an upswing. I think it has a lot to do with the musicians. They refuse to give up.
There's no better place to come across, you know, literally thousands and millions of people who come here and they want to be entertained. It's a great place for me to build something where I can reach people from all over the world and be in one city. And that's really cool.
I got to know Sammy, Tony Bennett, people like that. And I saw their work ethic, and I saw how they are. So when I walk on stage, and this is the corny part, I feel like I carry them with me. I feel like Sammy is on one shoulder, and it's the idea that, man, if I don't do everything I can do to be the best that I can be on any given night, then I'm letting those people down.
I miss Dean and Sammy and Frank and that kind of music.
I remember, when Sinatra was there, playing with the string section, and he would come out, and there's just this roar from the audience, and I saw there was times when I thought to myself, I would do this for nothing. It was so great. It's kind of come full circle. Made a great living playing for all these stars, playing all these shows, and now it's back to the real joy of playing with great jazz musicians.
And at the time we played them, it became sort of mundane. Because, like Sammy Davis, he's coming in again another 4 weeks. He was just here, and Dean Martin. But when I look back, I think we were actually in the middle of all this history, and I get a lot of the young players who say, geez, I wish I'd have been born in that era. I would love to have been here. Just from the little bit you've told me, so that must have been unbelievable. I said, well, it was.